Shout out to Christine Brennan. Team USA, y'all need to stop playing. Hold on, wait a second. Y'all will recognize and appreciate Caitlin Clark as the face of this whole get up. Nobody's checking for these other, no disrespect. Great basketball players. That don't mean people checking for you. You mean to tell me y'all put other people's face all on the Team USA stuff and y'all left Caitlin Clark off of it?
Look at that reaction. That's not just someone feeling let down. That's flat out shock. USA Basketball just released their promotional graphic for the December training camp, and the biggest star in women's basketball is completely missing. Not hidden in the corner, not squeezed into tiny text, not anywhere. This is the same player who single-handedly spiked WNBA ratings by over 400% in her first season. The same athlete whose jersey outsold every other women's player put together. And somehow, she didn't make the cut for the promo while Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, and Kaylia Copper were front and center. The news quietly dropped at midnight on a Friday, thanks to Christine Brennan, who's been covering Olympic basketball since 1984. And if you saw her reaction, you already know just how big of a bombshell this really is.
Out promoting women's basketball, bring new fans in, and get unprecedented attention for a team that dropped in TV viewership at the Paris Olympics. That's right, the women's USA viewership dropped at the Olympics in Paris. Nobody was watching it. They would have added the photo of one of the player to this graphic, but no.
And here's the part that makes this whole situation even harder to justify. The women's basketball team at the Paris Olympics suffered a massive decline in viewership compared to previous cycles. According to Brennan, the ratings dipped because casual fans simply didn't have a reason to tune in. The hardcore basketball crowd showed up, of course, but the big mainstream audience, the one advertisers rely on, completely checked out. Now compare that to Caitlin Clark's debut season with the Indiana Fever. Her games averaged 1.2 million viewers on cable. Every matchup she played in instantly became a spectacle. The league saw crowds they hadn't witnessed in more than 2 decades. Arenas that normally struggled to get halfway full were suddenly selling out long before game day. USA Basketball had the blueprint right there. They watched an entire WNBA season unfold in real time. They saw the surge in TV ratings. They saw the merch flying off shelves. They saw international reporters showing up just to cover one athlete. And after all that, they still decided to leave her completely off the promotional graphic. Yeah, let that sink in.
Well, I've given it, as you know, over the last 60 hours. I broke the news right around midnight, Friday to Saturday morning. And I think on both fronts, merit and publicity, you of course mentioned it, you know, it's just a total swing and a miss by the national governing body, by USA Basketball, just a missed opportunity. And but I'll start with my answer by saying I have covered this.
Now pay attention to the way Brennan describes the atmosphere at these Olympic gold medal games. She says she stood in the press tribune, the main media section at the Olympics, and the place looked so empty she literally used the word tumbleweeds. That's the scene surrounding the most dominant program in Olympic basketball history. The US women's team hasn't lost an Olympic game since 1992. 7 straight gold medals, one of the most successful dynasties across any Olympic sport, men's or women's. And yet, reporters who cover basketball for a living aren't even bothering to show up anymore because there isn't enough audience interest to justify media sending them. Bob Ryan, one of the most respected basketball journalists in America, talked to Brennan about this same issue back at the 2012 London Olympics. That was 12 years ago. This problem has been sitting in plain sight for over a decade. What is new is that women's basketball finally had the perfect solution dropped right at their feet, and instead of embracing it, USA Basketball is choosing to ignore it.
On that team, the team that so richly deserves attention and doesn't get it and won't get it without her, because there's just so much going on in an Olympics. On that same day, there probably will be 30 other gold medals given out, and sports editors and others have to make a decision. Do you go to Simone Biles? Do you go to women's soccer? Where do you go? It's not, you know, there's just too much going on. You put Caitlin Clark on that team, and every single one of those guys that can't stand women.
Now listen closely to how Brennan talks about male sports journalists. She isn't tiptoeing around it. She's saying out loud what most people in sports media won't admit publicly. There are reporters who will cover the men's Olympic basketball team without a second thought, yet won't bother showing up for the women's team. And when both teams are playing in the same building, that's not about timing. That's a deliberate choice based on what they think their audience cares about. These writers take assignments their editors will approve, stories that are guaranteed to get clicks. So when they pass on women's basketball, what they're really saying is, our readers won't care enough to justify it. But that entire reality flipped during the 2024 WNBA season. Suddenly, the same journalists who used to ignore the league were fighting to get media passes for Indiana Fever games. International outlets were sending reporters to Indianapolis purely to cover a rookie point guard. Brennan even recalls a British journalist at the Masters telling her he planned his Olympic coverage specifically around Caitlin Clark. The interest was there. The global attention was real. For the first time, the entire media landscape was aligned and ready to elevate women's basketball. And then USA Basketball chose to leave her off the Olympic roster completely, saying it was about honoring veterans and maintaining chemistry, even as the largest wave of worldwide attention the sport had ever seen was happening right before their eyes.
You too, Rich, how that the men's team, how that grew basketball around the world, especially for boys and men, and where it reached Africa. Well, the opportunity with Caitlin Clark's popularity, Africa, Europe, Asia. Think of how many number 22 USA jerseys would have been sold. Money that could have then been pumped back in to help have developmental programs.
And now Brennan is directly comparing this moment to the 1992 Dream Team, and she's not being dramatic. The modern basketball landscape spans nearly 40 countries. International broadcast rights are worth billions. And none of that existed before the world's biggest stars stepped onto the Olympic stage in '92. Her argument is simple. Caitlin Clark represented that exact kind of turning point for women's basketball, globally, not just in the United States. A number 22 USA jersey would have sold in places where women's basketball is practically non-existent. Young girls in countries without organized leagues would have had a star to watch, emulate, and dream about. The financial ripple effect alone could have been enormous. USA Basketball could have used that spike in merchandise revenue to fund youth programs. They could have taken the wave of international interest and built stronger development systems around the world. The growth potential was sitting right in their hands. Instead, they prioritized short-term chemistry and walked right past the biggest expansion opportunity the women's game has ever had.
And see what I'm saying? Christine Brennan gets it. Christine Brennan gets it. Regardless how you feel about her, she's been on this stuff from the beginning. Caitlin Clark got disrespected by Team USA when they had her coming off the bench when she was, 17? Y'all had her coming off the bench behind Haley Van Lith. Like, what are y'all talking about?
Here's why Brennan's voice carries so much weight. She's not some online personality chasing clicks, and she's not a rookie reporter trying to make a name by stirring the pot. She's been on the ground for every Olympics since 1984, writing for major national publications, building real relationships inside USA Basketball's leadership. So when she talks about the lack of interest in women's Olympic basketball, she isn't theorizing. She's recalling decades of standing in nearly empty media sections during gold medal games. She's lived it for 40 years, and when she casually mentions that her next interview is with a radio station in New Zealand, it proves something important. International outlets are actively following this story. That is not normal for a controversy about a training camp graphic. That's global media recognizing that USA Basketball just made a decision with long-term consequences. And look at the timing. The December 12th training camp hasn't even started yet. This isn't the official Olympic roster. It's not a huge press conference. It's literally just the promotional image for a practice. And it's already generating international headlines. That should tell USA Basketball everything they need to know about how badly they misread the moment. By leaving one player off a simple camp graphic, they accidentally proved the very point they keep denying. Her impact is so global that even her absence from a practice promo becomes worldwide news.
Say when they had her coming off the bench when she was 17. Y'all had her coming off the bench behind Haley Van Lith. Like, what are y'all talking about? This stuff has been going on far too long. Team USA, y'all need to get it together. Respect the woman with the throne. Get down in the comments, let me know what you think about it.
Now we get to the part that explains why this entire situation hits such a nerve. This isn't the first time USA Basketball has mishandled Caitlin Clark. Back when she was 17 and playing for the junior national teams, she wasn't even a starter. She came off the bench while Haley Van Lith was getting the starting role. Just think about that. The player who would eventually shatter Pete Maravich's 54-year NCAA scoring record wasn't wasn't considered good enough to start on a youth roster. The same athlete who would later become the most talked about women's basketball player in history was treated as a reserve option. And no, this wasn't some case of hindsight bias. Even at 17, Clark's skill level was unmistakable. She already had elite vision, unlimited range, and self-created offense that you simply can't teach. Anyone watching her could tell she was special, except apparently the USA basketball evaluators, who decided she should be a bench piece, which is exactly why this promotional graphic mess matters. It's not a one-off screw-up, it's part of a long, consistent pattern where USA basketball undervalues the one player who has done more for women's basketball than anyone in the last 20 years. And remember their own mission statement: winning medals is only half the job, growing the sport is the other half. That means expanding the audience, getting more people playing, building media relevance, and creating real financial stability. And by every single measure, Caitlin Clark is the most valuable force in women's basketball. She brought millions of new fans into the WNBA. She inspired countless kids to pick up a ball, girls and boys. She generated media coverage from outlets that usually ignore women's sports entirely. She proved with actual dollars that women's basketball isn't niche. It's a thriving market when it's promoted correctly. But instead of embracing what works, USA basketball doubled down on the same outdated approach that already failed. That's not just out of touch, that's institutional dysfunction. It shows a governing body that doesn't understand its own audience or the value of its biggest star. And here's what makes it all even more ridiculous. The WNBA just secured a new CBA that massively raised salaries and benefits. And that deal happened because the league could point to huge spikes in ratings, attendance, and sponsorships. All of that momentum, all of it was driven primarily by Caitlin Clark. Players across the entire league benefited financially, regardless of whether they play with her, against her, or can't stand her. That's the real backdrop, and it's why this just a graphic actually symbolizes how far behind USA basketball is falling. Because the truth is simple, the new CBA doesn't happen without the surge of real, measurable audience growth she created. That growth didn't magically appear. It came from the one player who turned women's basketball into must-watch television for millions. And now, as USA basketball prepares for the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, the question becomes unavoidable. Are they going to keep repeating old mistakes or finally catch up to the moment? These upcoming events are enormous chances to build on the surge of momentum the WNBA captured in 2024. The Los Angeles Olympics especially will deliver packed arenas, primetime coverage, and global attention on a scale far bigger than anything we saw in Paris. But momentum doesn't just carry itself. The millions of casual fans who discovered women's basketball because of Caitlin Clark need a reason to stay connected. They need to see the very player who pulled them into the sport showcased on the biggest possible stage. If USA basketball leaves her off the roster again, or keeps pushing her to the margins in promotional material, those new fans won't stick around. And once momentum slips away, you don't get a do-over. What happened in 2024 was lightning in a bottle, a once-in-a-generation star, a captivating storyline, and a sports media landscape desperate for something new all converged at the perfect moment. USA basketball now has a choice. They can build on that surge or waste it. Right now, they're wasting it. Their decisions are being shaped by internal politics, loyalty to veterans, and outdated evaluation criteria that simply don't match where the women's basketball market is today. They're clinging to an old system instead of embracing the chance to reshape the future of the sport for the next generation.